Okay. All right. Next up, and thank you, Carol, and thank you, everyone. What an amazing segment. Super cool. In fact, I want to do like a tiny press conference that's just focused on all this. Imagine that, a tiny press conference, right? And it's just focused on everything. Like we could just get together and just architect the whole thing. So let's do that. Judy, so great to meet you. Thank you so much for your patience and flexibility. Please take it away. It'll be Judy followed by Tyler, who's been super patient and super cool. Thank you, Tyler. Hope you're hanging in there okay. Give me a thumbs up if you are. Otherwise, I don't know, throw some produce at me or something. And then Danielle, and we also got Professor Peanut. Is that feeling good for everyone? Judy, take it away. So, and just give me feedback in the chat if any feedback. Thanks so much. All right, Judy, now you can. Sorry. Thanks, Judy. Go for it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. I'm happy to be here, and it's been so great and interesting to hear everybody's concepts so far. So personally, I am based on Long Island in New York, and I am juggling a bit of different projects right now, but the main one I'm focused on at the moment is called the Long Island Organics Council. And basically, we are a group of women, 4 or 5 women. I say 4 or 5 because one is in and out sometimes. But we basically run this group and have a lot of traction so far. We've had a bunch of meetings, and basically we're a connecting group. And it's focused on organic, so compost. So if I can present the screen, share my screen, let me see. I have a little presentation. Okay. Sorry. Sorry. So the Long Island Organics Council, we are a group of 5 women, and we are the 5 women here. We're the founding members of this group. So I'm at the top, and then my other members are Beth, Tenny, Joy, Shama, and Rachel. So we all come from different backgrounds, but our main common goal is getting composting established on Long Island. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Long Island, or at least like New York, the way the waste system is, but as of right now, there is no major composting system in place, at least on Long Island. I know in some parts of New York, they have started to have curbside pickup for compost, and I know in other parts of, I know in Europe for a fact that they have organics pickup. Like, I'm actually Italian. I remember hearing some people speaking about Italy, and I grew up in Italy, and in my small town on a mountain in southern Italy, we have a compost pickup service with population 1,000. But on Long Island, where it's the metropolitan area of New York City, still there is no composting pickup system, which blows my mind because it's something that is so, I think, essential and vital to a community to have a system in place for organic material to be diverted from landfills, you know, used for farms and different types of, you know, communities where we can make that food waste turned into something else and keep it out of the landfills into a revolving system where food waste becomes food. I think that's something so vital. So this is us, and our vision is the totality of Long Island's waste organic materials to be sustainably managed and diverted from landfills. And even though this is based on Long Island, I don't see how this can't be expanded beyond Long Island, because there are so many communities outside of New York, even in the US as a whole, that should be doing better with waste management. So I'm starting with Long Island, but I'm not letting that stop me from, reaching other communities beyond. Our mission is to build a strong network of members from across Long Island that are committed to the sustainable management of non-edible organic materials through all scales of composting, anaerobic digestion, and the beneficial use of compost. And if any of you are not familiar with the concept of compost, it's the result of composting, which is, organic matter or food waste decomposing properly. It is considered gold for the agricultural industry, landscapers, and backyard farmers. It's a nutrient-rich, dirt-like material that can be used to enrich soil and nourish growth. It provides essential nutrients for plant growth, eliminates needs for fertilizers and pesticides. It improves soil structure so that soil can easily hold the correct amount of moisture, nutrients, and air. And because it retains water, it also saves water. It's an essential part of reducing your household waste. So why should we compost? Our landfills are filling up. That's the bottom line. Landfills are filling up and they are scrambling right now for solutions. In fact, the US government is sending out multiple opportunities with grants to establish composting systems and facilities in multiple communities, including New York as of right now. And this is a chart of the US municipal solid waste distribution generated in 2018 by material. So if you look at the side chart, up to 63% of our waste is compostable. And then if you count recyclables, 88.2% of our waste can be diverted from landfills. It's just about, having systems in place to make sure that that is happening. So as you can see, it is absolutely vital, especially since our landfills are filling up and filling up and filling up, and soon we'll have nowhere else to put things. So we need to come up with solutions. Another thing I wanted to put on my slide is hunger on Long Island. So as 182,000 people go hungry on Long Island tonight, supermarkets on Long Island are tossing out more than enough food to feed all those people. There are over 9,000 supermarkets and farms on Long Island, and combined, they waste over 27 million pounds of food every night. That's enough to feed every hungry person 45 times over. So, I mean, the amount of waste out there is insane, and Long Island has an excess, a surplus of food. I know that there are some mainstream companies like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's that do donate their food right before it expires. So they go to food pantries, and I've seen it firsthand. So I mean, that is good, but there needs to be more having been done. On the plus side, there are some current laws and proposed laws for composting, which I thought I would share as well, including the Compost Act, which has been introduced in Congress. And this proposed act would create $2 billion in funding over a period of 10 years. And the main purpose of the Compost Act is to require the designation of composting as a conservation practice and activity, and to provide grants and loan guarantees for composting facilities and programs. So like I said, the US right now is scrambling essentially to fund facilities that would create these systems. But the problem is there is no system right now. There's a broken system. In New York State, as of right now, there has been a law approved and it is effective as of January 1st, 2022, where all businesses that generate an annual average of 2 tons of wasted food per week or more, they must either donate their food or recycle all food scraps if they are within 25 miles of an organics recycler. Now, this is great, but on Long Island, we do not have any food recycling or composting facilities nearby most mainstream businesses or supermarkets. So that means that a lot of Long Island is exempt from this law because they are not next to any facilities. Some universities, actually, I know a majority of universities in Long Island do have facilities on the premise, but they're not accepting any waste beyond the university produced waste. So even if in theory we are closer to those facilities, we're not accepting or we cannot bring those food scraps to those facilities. So again, like I said, there is a broken system. And even though we have this law in place, there's nothing as of right now that is being built. Although I know for a fact in the next 2 or 3 years, there are plans to have something built, but again, it takes time. So as our group, the Long Island Organics Council, we've been linking up multiple groups, and this is how we've actually been spreading the news of these facilities that are in the process of being made, as well as the epidemic that is food waste and, for lack of a better term, the wasting of food waste going into landfills. We are having an event this upcoming Sunday at an environmental festival in Huntington, New York. So that's one of our upcoming events. And we are still having a meeting. It's an online meeting. All of our meetings are actually online. So if anyone ever wanted to join and be a part of our email list and find out, it's not, like I said, just limited to Long Island. We talk about a variety of topics. Our last meeting was on anaerobic digesters, which are it's a machinery and system that breaks down food into a liquid form, and then from that state it can be used in other places and recycled essentially. So we talk about all different forms of compost and ideas and concepts surrounding compost. And our next meeting, we're going to be discussing the bokashi composting method, if anyone's familiar with it. But if you want to find out more, come to our meeting. And then other future topics and ideas that we will be discussing would be compostable packaging and kind of everything that surrounds it, the question marks everyone has in their head. Can this be put in a recycling bin? Can this be composted? Why are companies not getting compostable packaging? Why isn't it more mainstream? That's all of that we'll be talking about at that meeting once we have that. We're also thinking of doing a farmer and composter connector meeting. So having, farmers kind of link up with whoever is composting on Long Island so that any waste that farmers have can be directed to the composters that are on Long Island. Some of them are like low scale composting sites, community composting as well. Another thing that we're going to be discussing is sustainable school composting models. And there is a successful model in the Bethlehem School District in upstate New York, which is very interesting. They have completely revolutionized the school system by having compostable material for kids to use, a lot of reusable things like reusable forks, knives, etc., where as opposed to all the school districts that use plastic forks, plastic knives, etc., styrofoam trays. All of that is kind of upgraded and made into an efficient and circular system where all of their food goes into their composting system, and they actually compost on site at this school district in upstate New York. So I'm going to probably have the school superintendent, I believe, who set up this system speak at one of those events and see if we can get other schools to follow that same model. And then we have other things that we plan to do, such as show the movie Kiss the Ground. If you haven't seen it, it's a great documentary that talks all about the benefits of composting. as well as a master composting program that will allow people to be taught how to properly compost. And like I said, our group is not just limited to Long Island. We would love to collaborate with like-minded groups worldwide to find the best methods of spreading awareness on composting and its benefits to the environment. If you want to contact us, this is our email. And we don't have a website yet, but it is coming soon. We're building it as we speak. So if anyone wants to send that email, I can put it in the group as well. I gotta stop sharing my screen 1 second.
I'll help you there, Judy. I'll help you.
Okay.
Okay, you got it.
I think I got it. All right. If anyone
Beautiful.
has any questions or comments or anything, I'm open to discussion.
Love it, love it, love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you, Judy. Yes, questions?
Thank you.
Mhm. Well, I mean, it fits so well with everything we've been talking about and sharing about here with Carol's project. That just fits, boom, hand in glove. Also with Sarah, BJ, Annie V, Food Healers, the whole thing. Simon's local economies, regenerative economies. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like the last stop on a whole cycle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and Shannon's Our Heart's Gardens as well. Absolutely. Thank you, Jimena. And everything, Nancy, Jimena. I mean, everything here fits. Everything here fits together, all the way to Jonathan's mirrors and solar panels and everything else to keep it cool. The only thing missing is the connection with the aliens. Gee, it's too bad we don't have anyone here to talk about aliens, but we'll come. That's Tyler coming right up. Sorry. Boom, cha-ching. So, but first, any questions, comments for Judy and Tyler? Thanks so much.
The email for contact in the chat as well, in case anyone wants to take that email down. But thank you, everyone. If you want to collaborate, I'd be happy to. If you want to come to our meeting, drop your email in the chat, and I'll love to add you to the email list.
Love it, love it, love it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow. All righty. We are 6.5 hours into the press conference, and there has not been a dull moment in 6.5 hours. This is collective intelligence. This is community. Carol, what you've been dreaming about and building towards, the virtual part of it's happening here. Now we just need some soil, some upcycled building materials, with a nod to one of our first presentations of today on the topic. My goodness, look at all the puzzle pieces that are right here in front of us. This is the new world. This is the new world. And
whoop, whoop. Yes, it is.
that's what I'm talking about. Whoop it up, whoop it up. This is the new world. Let's just take a couple of minutes and just whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop. Wait a second. We're communicating with the aliens now. Wait a second. There's a spacecraft landing. Tyler, what do I do? No, but seriously, whoop it up. This is some serious whoopage. And this is the press conference, the people's press conference, the community press conference, the heart press conference that brings it all together. I think the aliens are listening. I think they're like here. We just like, I don't know, are we like channels for the aliens or something? Anyway, Tyler's going to unpack all those mysteries for us, but whoop it up, people. Whoop, 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 whoop. Oh my goodness. I'm so blessed. Thank you all. Thank you. This is so crazy cool. Thank you, Vincent, for inviting Judy. Thank you, Melissa, for introducing me to Carol. Wow. And And thank you all for introducing us all to each other. Wow. Oh, deep breath. Wow. Carol, I think you have your Distributed Leadership Advisory Board right here in front of you.
Is that what we're going to call it?
We've come up with so many names for it. That's what I'm saying. It's a hyper object, because a hyper object, you can look at it from this angle and say, oh, it's a this. You look at it from that angle, oh, it's a that. It's like that, you know, the old proverbial story of the 7 blind people groping different parts of the elephant, and it's just like, ooh, you know, that's the hyper object for you. It's this, and it's that, and it's that, and it's this, and it's that, and it's this, and it's that. It's all together. It's not one thing. There's no hierarchy, right? There's no head or tail. There's just it, right? Mm-hmm. And those of you who are on my email list, you'll have seen emails in the last few months about the hyper object. It's a, you know, I start getting these visions, and I just start writing, you know. And for those of you who suffer through it, there's some good stuff in there, hopefully.
Now, if we could just get Umair on here.
We will. I'm channeling.
It would be amazing, right?
He will be. He will be. Yeah, dear Umair is part of my presentation, which will be the caboose of the press conference. That's how I get.
When are you going? Because I need to know when you're going, so I don't run out of juice.
Oh, gotcha. You know, at this rate, it'll probably be in half an hour-ish.
Okay.
Half an hour-ish, something like that. Yeah.
Sounds great.
I can send you a text if you want. If you're not here, I'll text you. I know where you live.
Zoom on demand. Are we going to get a new thing called Zoom on demand? I'll let you know when I'm on Zoom, and I'll just send you a little thing.
Yeah, totally. No, the collective intelligence is coming up with all the above. Trove will probably pioneer Zoom on demand, right? We'll just have like a little app
press
on
a
our
button
phone
for Stu, and it comes right through your.
Like an animated Vincent. We just like tickle him and Zoom on demand.
Or you press this button and you get that same thing of Stu, and it comes right through to your, like an astronaut types, you know, when astronaut ice cream. It's like that comes in a packet, and we give it to astronauts, and they can take it to space.
Well, with those words, we're about to blast off with Tyler into the alienosphere. So and Tyler, thank you so much for your patience and for being super cool and for helping us hold the space with that beautiful, loving energy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to have been invited to participate, and I'm really grateful to be here. Anytime there is an opportunity that comes into my reality and my awareness to promote and share the initiative that my team and I have been working on for the last couple of years, I always take those opportunities and try my best to convey the message. So thank you to all the facilitators and everyone that's still here 6.5 hours in. So I'll just dive right into it. So my name is Tyler Zaradnik. I am the founder of Contact Tour, which is the continuance of new technologies and cosmic telecommunications. And our modus operandi is to establish bilateral contact with extraterrestrial intelligence and non-human terrestrial intelligence in an ambassadorial and diplomatic way for the benefit and the advancement of our civilization. So throughout the press conference that I've tuned into over the last 3 hours or so, I've listened to all these great initiatives and missions and nonprofits and startups from all across the globe that are taking the responsibility of addressing very critical philanthropic, humanitarian, and environmental and social issues, which I have the utmost respect for. Anybody that dedicates any amount of their energy and time and life force to confronting the issues that we're facing as a human family, I'm grateful for your existence. I'm grateful for all the work that you're putting in every single day to make this world a better place for all sentient life. So thank you. That being said, the subject that we're about to dive into for decades has been subjected to social opprobrium. It's been discredited. It's been ridiculed. It's been stigmatized. It's been demonized. But now, in this critical transition point in our civilization, it's my belief that it is the most important geopolitical and global subject that we're confronting as a species. And that is the unequivocal notion that our planet is being observed by highly advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. So I'm here today to just let you all know that our team has been going out for 2 years, and we've been utilizing a prototype series of protocols that were originally developed by CSETI, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And these protocols are constantly being refined, renewed, and developed as we go out and we continue to take this initiative and make contact. And there's 3 main variables that we use. Oh, it's CSETI, C-S-E-T-I, Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This set of protocols was developed back in the mid-'80s. Yes, CSETI. I'm just reading the chat right now as I go into this conversation. So using sound, light, and coherent thought, and a method known as CHI, cognitive human interfacing through different meditation modalities, we've successfully on multiple occasions connected and channeled information from higher extraterrestrial intelligences. And throughout our experiences, we've been documenting all of the sightings that we've been observing and publishing them online to our platforms, which are now reaching just over 40,000 people a day. And we're reaching nearly 250,000 people a month. And we're showing these experiences to everyone on our planet. Now, the main reason this initiative and this mission resonates so deeply with me, and it's a passion that I pursue every single day, is because all of the issues that have been mentioned over the course of the last 6.5 hours during this press conference are all under this umbrella issue of the premeditative, deliberate, systematic, and engineered secrecy of this higher reality that we're being visited by extraterrestrials. It's a transnational issue that all world governments are participating in, and there is a consensus general perception of this issue that the extraterrestrials are either A, not here, and it's some kind of pseudoscience that has been maintained through skeptic materialism mainstream media. B, the extraterrestrials that are here pose an existential threat to our way of life and our civilization. Or C, the narrative that the ETs are being portrayed under through mainstream media has a very specific militaristic agenda attached. So our initiative, Contact Tour, is presenting a transparent and authentic and genuine point of view of us going out and having experiences with extraterrestrials to emphasize the fact that A, they are not hostile, they are not here to invade us or to get into a conflict with us, but on the contrary, they're very concerned with our authoritarian militaristic worldview that we're projecting onto each other, and they're very concerned with how we treat the environment, and they're even more concerned with our use of nuclear energy and thermonuclear weapons. So what we've been creating over the last several years is a public database that has thousands of pieces of material available through contacttour.net that shows documentation, videographic, photographic evidence that unequivocally proves the notion that we are being visited by extraterrestrials, and the general perception of their view of humanity is that we are now going into space because we are now at the stage of becoming a galactic civilization. We're sending rovers to different planets to collect samples and data. We're going to be establishing bases on the moon. Interplanetary tourism is only maybe 2 or 3 decades away. And we're going into this new realm and this new dimension of our existence, still holding and harboring these same confrontational, oppositional levels of thinking that could ultimately and detrimentally leave humanity to an extinction level event. So the issue of the extraterrestrial topic is one of such that if the acknowledgement and the disclosure that's truthful happens through government channels across our planet, the technologies that would become available in the public sector would radically and profoundly change every single aspect of our civilization. So we're talking about the environmental waste with the compost. We're talking about the energy efficiency and how we can make the most use of our utilities and our depletion of the energy grid. We're talking about how we can have fundamental basic resources available for all human beings on the planet. All of this comes down to the technologies that have been developed, refined, mastered, and suppressed for decades. There are aspects and factions within the private aerospace industry and within the defense contracting industry, such as Lockheed Martin, EG&G, Raytheon, NASA, OSI, Northrop Grumman, and all of these other private entities that have technologies that would radically and profoundly, like I just mentioned, change every single aspect of our way of living as a civilization. And our mission in going out and engaging these extraterrestrials is to show the general populace who have not yet been exposed to the notion that the ETs are here, is that yes, not only are they here and they're open to communicating with us, but how are they getting here? What forms do their technologies take that allow them to traverse interstellar distances? They're not stopping on Mars at a chevron. They're not using nuclear power. They're not putting coal into their craft, and they're not traveling in a materialistic, linear physical dimension. They have technology that we're fully aware of within the national security apparatus that is operating outside of our conventional understanding of physics. Now, the primary reason this information has been systematically suppressed over the last 80 years is because ultimately, at the core essence of this very issue, our entire global economic system is being backed by the petrodollar, which is a Federal Reserve note. So if these technologies are exposed and they're presented to the public and they're applied to various public applications, hundreds of trillions of dollars, I'll say that number one more time, hundreds of trillions of dollars and petroeconomic assets and commodities globally will become obsolete, and it would 180 the entire hierarchical transnational power structures on our planet. So our role as an organization is to get this information out to hundreds of millions of people so we can begin to activate and take responsibility for this higher reality, and we can bring forth a revolution of a citizens diplomacy initiative and demand these technologies be released in a peaceful, public, social application for the betterment and the equality of all sentient life on our planet, and that we need to reevaluate our philosophical, theological, political, social, and cultural worldviews on how we can integrate, process, and incorporate coexisting with non-human intelligences that are radically different from us in a peaceful, pluralistic, and integral way. And that's what Contact Tour is. So if anyone's interested in our mission, you can visit contacttour.net, where we have our entire statement up, which is very comprehensive and is very detailed as to the how and why we're out here doing what we're doing. There's an entire tab on our website, which is called the Paradigm Shift, which is fundamentally at the elementary level explaining how our collective worldviews are going to have to be altered and shifted to accept this new reality. And we're just here to be a catalyst of information for people as they go through this transformation on the individual level, which will extrapolate out into the entire collective of our human family. So not to dive too deep into the different dimensions and aspects of this, but that's in essence what we're doing. So I'm open to taking any specific questions or any comments. Thank you.
Yeah, Nancy, go for it, sister. Dude,
Hi,
awesome, Tyler.
Hi, it's awesome. I'm so excited about what you're doing and totally believe you. And, I've thought about this so many times. There's nothing worse that aliens could do than humans are already doing on this planet. And, you get all these sci-fi movies about how the aliens are coming and they're going to do this and do that. And we're doing that maybe a little more slowly. So and people tend to be very afraid of something they don't understand instead of their control, But I did hear once a number of years ago that there was a species that was intelligent and advanced enough to reach us, that if they weren't peaceful, they would have destroyed it themselves by now. So anyway, I think it's fascinating, and is there any way that we as, civilians can tune into them also?
Yeah, well, thank you for your comment and your feedback. I'll touch on the 2 points you just made. The first one being the hypothesis that extraterrestrials may pose a threat, and then the second point being how can we as citizens engage and activate and initiate contact with them. The first point being,
I keep losing my signal. I can't even
No,
hear what you're
it's
saying.
not you, Nancy. I think Tyler froze up.
Yeah, the aliens are interfering.
He's communicating
trying
with
to
the
get through.
aliens right now. Let's all be quiet. Let him channel, and then he'll be back. Go ahead, Tyler.
Just to clarify, I'm not a channel by any means. I'm purely approaching this from a very rational and scientific academic place. So to touch on the first point you just made, if these extraterrestrial civilizations harbored hostile intentions towards us, that would have been made abundantly clear decades ago with the first detonation of the atomic bomb. And the fact that our way of life has not been overtly interrupted and intercepted with all of the environmental devastation that we've been doing, and our weaponization of space and placing weapons in space in our upper atmosphere and engaging and on several occasions effectively downing extraterrestrial assets, it shows that they're at a higher state of consciousness where they do not want to lower their vibratory state to engage in a third dimensional linear conflict that we would not win anyway. So I think what's happening is that we're projecting humanism, the way that humans have treated the environment and the way that we treat the living cosmos and our living planet, and we're putting our beliefs and our practices onto these beings that we know nothing about. So I think that in order to become an interplanetary civilization, a prerequisite is understanding that all life is precious regardless of what form it takes, and that in order to get to that stage, being that level of a civilization which is able to effectively and efficiently have the capability of leaving their planet and exploring the cosmos, they understand that there's no separation and all points in space and time are connected. And that brings us around to why they came here in the first place. The first detonation of the atomic bomb happened at White Sands, New Mexico. And 2 years later, coincidentally, if you want to call it that, that's where the first downed extraterrestrial vehicle was located at Nellis Air Force Base, Area 51, and it was stored at S4. So they're clearly concerned with our hostility. So I think we have the narrative backwards. We should not be worried about their hostility coming and invading us. They're worried about our hostility and what we could potentially bring out into space. Now, the second point that you made on how could we activate and engage and initiate contact with the extraterrestrials, you can form a team, preferably a smaller team, the better, because there's a stronger, cohesive, conscious bond between smaller groups of people. You can go out and practice different meditation modalities and use a thought sequencing pattern that's called CTS, coherent thought sequencing, and you can focus on a singular intention to invite them in a peaceful way to make contact and to introduce yourselves as being ambassadors for the earth and our species. And I feel as though the more people we have going out and doing this, it will demonstrate to these ETs that are visiting here that there is a fraction and an aspect of humanity that is raising their consciousness and their vibratory state, that perhaps there's hope for us after all. And by no means is this any kind of outreach in a stage of cosmic codependency. We're not asking them to come down here and solve our problems for us. We're asking them to remain available to make contact and to remain open to make contact, because through these different contact experiences, they will raise our individual state of consciousness, which will extrapolate out into the collective state of consciousness. And then from a higher state of consciousness, we can solve all the problems that are in front of us that we have not been able to solve up to this point. No problem can be no problem can be solved within the same state of consciousness that created it. So what we're doing with this initiative is we're going out and we're empowering our human family and one another, that we can take control of this situation and we can bypass these hierarchical governmental power structures and say, we don't need you to tell the truth to us, because clearly for the last 80 years, you have been blatantly lying to us and you're a walking contradiction of information. We need to go out and get this information for ourselves.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Carol's got her hand up, followed by Jonathan.
So I guess I have 2 points and one actual question. So my belief is basically that 80 years ago is probably not the very first contact, and just based on African history, it's probably been since the beginning of time, actually, the beginning of human time. The second point that or the actual question that I have to you specifically is this concept of using the terminology ET. For me, that specific term throws me off because of all of the actual media and movie and all that stuff that has brainwashed us into believing that they are other than we are, right? When in actuality, I see them more as probably guardians of the galaxy or universe, or however you want to describe other sentient beings, and that they are here and they've been here for a very long time. And so I just I guess my question is, why do you guys choose to use that terminology when it has been co-opted and it has been polluted to a certain degree in mainstream media, period? And is there a push to maybe utilize a different term that is more holistic and more inclusive, that people could actually tap into and not be fearful of, I guess, is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's my question. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, great questions. Absolutely, great questions. So to touch on the first part of that, how you mentioned that these beings have been here throughout human existence, absolutely. When I referenced the 80 years, I'm talking about the governmental covert secrecy from these power structures that we have empowered and enabled since the early 1940s, perhaps even the 1930s. So I'm talking about a systematic, premeditative architecture of secrecy that's been happening for 80 years. I don't mean the overall general presence, because my personal belief and the very compelling and very persuasive materials that are out there is that more than likely our ancient civilizations, with their profound geodetic knowledge and the architecture that they built around the world, is probably in fact the result of some kind of higher intelligence that's been here from probably the dawn of man. So when I mentioned the 80 years, I was specifically referring to the governmental secrecy. Now, the terminology extraterrestrial, the reason why we continue to use that acronym is because, well, the general population will be more receptive and receiving to that terminology. And although it has been oversaturated and there has been false threat narratives and fear-mongering agendas that have accompanied the word alien or ET, we feel as though from a collective perception of it, we need to counterbalance that fear narrative and come to some kind of equilibrium to show people that that term, although it is weighted and there's a lot of negative association with it, isn't the case. And through the materials we publish, we're showing people that there has been operations from within the intelligence community that have been using different forms of psychological manipulation to do this and to program people into thinking X, Y, and Z about the term alien or ET. So the reason we're sticking to the term and the acronym ET for the time being is because we're just trying to counterbalance all of the disinformation that's out there and to water down the saturation that's been on that acronym. And my personal opinion, without diving too deep into the rabbit hole about this, is I feel as though the term ET isn't broad enough to describe the phenomenon of this intelligence that's observing us. If I wanted to use a broader, accurate, more defined acronym, or I guess word to describe them, I would call them ultra-terrestrials, because I don't necessarily think that they're just coming from a physical star system on a physical planet and they're traveling through physical space-time to get to our physical planet. I think that it's much more complex than that, and there's different dimensions of this conversation as to the how they're getting here and the why. So I feel as though an ultra omnipresent, omnipotent intelligence is more accurate in describing these beings. But if we're looking at this from a general demographic of people who have never been exposed to the fields of quantum mechanics or quantum physics or entanglement or consciousness sciences or the noetic sciences or the esoteric or what a lot of people deem as pseudoscience and metaphysical, we have to use terminology that the most generalized state of awareness and perception can understand. So if we were to come out to the public and break down that they're ultra-terrestrials, they're coming from different dimensions, they're using consciousness interfacing technology, that may go over people's heads and it may not be as palatable as saying there's ETs here from outer space. So I think we have to start at a very fundamental, basic, and elementary level of explaining this to people. And then as this subject matter garners traction and there's a more broad scale awareness to it, then we can get into the specifics of who and what they are.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Jonathan, go for it.
Hey there. Yeah, I'm still skeptical about the existence of current extraterrestrials visiting us. But I must say, after building 20 different reflector designs and putting them outside, sometimes for years at a time, I have noticed more aerial phenomena, both daytime and nighttime, around certain designs. And if you go to my profile picture up at the top and you pin it to your screen, it'll expand it to fill your screen. This is a particular design from 2015 that was out for a few years. And I have to admit, the aerial phenomena did pick up. And it makes me wonder if whether I had stumbled upon accidentally a road sign of sorts that, you know, in my own joking way, I imagine this road sign said, okay to dump your garbage here or something like that. But have you stumbled upon any kind of geometric shapes that seem to be a language for different types of beings?
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic question, Jonathan. I appreciate it. I guess to touch on the first point of, and I'm completely with you on this, being a very rational, level-headed skeptic about these kinds of things, because I'm also more or less still very skeptical about things. I try to approach all of the subjects that we look into and our experiences in a very intellectualized way, and I try to rule out all possibilities before I deem something to be an anomaly and it doesn't have a prosaic or conventional explanation. The real shifting point for a lot of the skeptics, especially in mainstream academia and the scientific community, was the revelations that happened back in 2017 with the Pentagon releasing, disclosing the fact that they had a $22 million program called ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And with the revelation of the disclosure of that program, 3 declassified videos were presented into the public domain called the FLIR, the Forward Looking Infrared, the Go Fast, and the Gimbal. And within those 3 declassified infrared videos show anomalous objects that appear to be displaying technologies that are tens of thousands, if not thousands, hundreds of thousands of years more advanced than our current development. And they're able to hover stationary 80,000 feet above the Earth's atmosphere and stay there for 10 plus hours without refueling, being stationary. And then they're able to instantaneously accelerate and get to sea level in 1.87 seconds, enter the ocean momentarily, then shoot back up into our atmosphere within 2 seconds. So they're trans-medium vehicles that are able to go 31 times the speed of sound, which is just over 1,200 Gs in force. And our fastest, I'm just readjusting here, our fastest aircraft can't even do a fraction of those kinds of speeds that are being showcased with the flight characteristics of these objects. They're able to actively jam radar or go completely undetected by radar. They can go undetected by thermal imaging and infrared optics in majority of the cases. They have disabled on multiple occasions our Minutemen missile silos, leaving all of the missiles inoperable. They have tracked and followed the exact flight coordinates and trajectory of commercial airliner and military airliners. And they have been seen and reported by over 70,000 people a year and documented with high fidelity video. So I don't believe at this point it's a matter of science fiction. We like to say it's science fact. And we're now at the crossing point here as a civilization where we have to reevaluate and reconsider all of our understandings of physics and how the physical universe actually operates, because apparently there appears to be intelligences that have a vastly superior understanding in these spaces than we do. And my personal belief and why there's so many skeptics out there, more or less in the scientific community and people that are deniably interested in this space, is because if you allow your ego mind to be at the forefront of your identity, and that ego mind is associated with certain principles and beliefs and ideological stances about how the universe operates and what you use to conceptualize it, it's going to be very hard and difficult for people to allow those belief systems to dissolve, to integrate this new information that we're not the pinnacle of existence. And that's the reason why a lot of this has been stigmatized and completely and blatantly ignored in a lot of mainstream academia. So I understand the skepticism. Now, the second point that you made with me, have we noticed any kind of patterns in communicating with the extraterrestrials, or just for a more broader term, we'll just call them the others for right now, because I do agree with the point that Nancy made a few moments ago. We've noticed that just through our research and all the available materials, there have been thousands of unexplainable images in crop circles and different fields of vegetation and different natural landscapes and environments that appear to be synthetically designed, and they're artificial in design, and they're not naturally occurring, that have consistencies in their design, and they're global, and there doesn't appear to be a conventional explanation for them that show more or less mathematical sequences of some kind of language that could be interpreted. We just haven't figured it out yet. So the crop circle phenomenon is valid. And although there are a ton of man-made hoaxes, the very intricate, detailed, and complex crop circles by no means can be recreated by man. And there have been several initiatives out there, people who tried to recreate crop circles to the same level of detail, and they failed miserably. So I believe the crop circle phenomenon is a valid and authentic and very compelling form of these others communicating messages with us. And another pattern that we've noticed is through radio transmissions during our field expeditions. Every time we go out with our team and we organize and facilitate a CE5 event, which is a close encounter of the fifth kind, which is human-initiated contact with ETs, to call them ETs, we noticed that our UV 5R Pro open frequency ham radios continuously receive quantized, cadenced sequences of chirps that are often associated and correlating to anomalous sighting that happens right above the airspace at our observation point. And we're in the process right now of exploring different ways to decode and to figure out if these chirps have significance and they're trying to convey a message to us. So I think that just throughout history of different people that claim to have had encounters and contactees and abductees and what have you, there seems to be an overlaying narrative that the ETs or the others are trying to get information to us. And various forms of media, call it different forms of media, whether it's radio feedback and transmission, crop circles that are left in the ground, transmissions through different kinds of channeling experiences. And we're going to continue to explore these avenues, and we're going to publish whatever it is that we find. So thank you. And I hope that addressed your question.
A little bit.
Okay.
I think it would also be really interesting to see how that overlaps with the artistic world and the artists particularly. Just because I think that the first half of your presentation, when you were talking about like meditation and other forms of engagement that are not mainstream currently, it's just a very fascinating topic to me in that term, especially being an artist, and how that may also be one way that they're connecting, but we don't see it that way because we're looking through it through human eyes, right? Yeah, I'd just like to throw that out there as well.
Well, it's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because one hypothesis that we feel very strongly about is that music is a universal and translatable language that's interplanetary. If I were to produce and compose a song here on Earth and I went over to a star system that's hundreds of thousands of light years away and played them that same composed piece of music, that would be received in the same sequence of frequencies that it was produced here. So we feel as though different cadences of frequencies through music is going to, in some form, be a means of communication. And on our most recent expedition to Sequoia National Park, we took the feedback that we received through the radios that we believe was anomalous, and we actually decoded it into different musical notes using the circle of fifths. And then we took those same notes in the same melody at the same tempo in the same sequence, and then we put it into a MIDI keyboard that's inside of Ableton, and we recreated that pattern, which ended up being a melody. And then we broadcasted that melody into a lighting system called InnerSense, which uses a lighting fixture with 50,000 lumens inside of it. And then we projected that lighting code and that sequence up into the sky before and after our meditation. And within a few moments of activating that lighting fixture, we began seeing these objects flying above us in the sky that to the naked eye appear to just be circular orbs of illuminating like plasma or light. So just through our firsthand experiences, there seems to be a surface level correlation between frequency, sound, and the sightings that we have when we're out in the field.
All right. Mark Antoine has his hand up, followed by Pauline, if I got it right.
Cool.
By the way, Jamen, I realized I cannot chat anymore. It seems my chat has been disabled.
Yeah, I think we're being visited by the aliens. They really want us to focus on what each other is saying, and I'm trying to get them to release it. But anyway, Tyler, maybe you got a trick. Anyway, I don't know what's up with that. Let me, I actually don't know. You're not the only one. So-
Count me among the skeptics. Of course, I wish life.
Oh, I think I think it's restored now. Sorry, I think it's restored.
Yes,
Sorry
it
about
is.
that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. When you and I'll take issue with one very, very small thing you said when you said the reason there's this organized skepticism is that skeptics have an ego that makes them refuse not being the pinnacle of creation. Most people I know who are curious about aliens, interested and studying scientifically, because there are, like the city people are a good example. They want to see aliens. I don't think there's any of us who would love nothing more than to meet people who are more advanced, more evolved than us. I'm a skeptic, not that aliens exist per se, but that they have found a way to cross distances physically, for example. There may be other ways. I don't know. I don't want to be too negative about that. But certainly I haven't seen any compelling evidence. Now, maybe I've missed some. But seeing its ego, I'll personally take it as, no, not me. I'm not saying I have no ego, of course. I'm trying. I wish I could say I have no ego, but certainly not about that. Certainly nothing would please me more than meeting aliens. And I think that's the case with most scientists who are, like me, curious and doubting most of the existing evidence. So that's the only thing I to. That's the only thing that is personal and that I thought I'd take issue with.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Generally speaking, my perspective about egotism being associated with skepticism has to do with mainstream science. Like, for example, if you want to take tenured professors at Harvard University back when John E. Mack wrote his book, Abductions, Human Encounters with Extraterrestrials, they weighed out all the evidence of all these encounters, and he actually interviewed over 700 people that were highly credible, sober witnesses, held positions of power, and they played a very critical social role, a lot of them being doctors, lawyers, police officers, military personnel, hundreds of these people from all across the globe, not knowing one another, having no consensus as to relaying the stories to one another, all sharing the exact same experiences. Now, when John E. Mack wrote and published this book, he got put in front of a board at Harvard of all of the professors that were teaching at the time, all these tenured professors and the entire council, and they threatened to take away his tenureship, and they also threatened to completely remove him from the roster of professors at Harvard University. And he had to call in a constitutional attorney to defend his case and then present all of the evidence that was available to say that his book was actually valid and it was legitimate. He actually got funding from the Rockefeller Foundation to call forth all of the witnesses that were presented in his book to bring them in front of the Harvard Council. And then the moment that the Harvard Council discovered that he actually had funding to, so to speak, put money where his mouth was and to bring all these witnesses forward, they immediately, in that instance, waived the session they were having with him and said, you know what, we're actually not going to push on this, and we're going to let you go about promoting your book. That's a very small example and one specific example of how mainstream academics in different universities and different institutions have almost a biased, confrontational skepticism towards this. John E. Mack was a tenured professor with decades in experience in human psychology, interviewed 700 people, published a very compelling book with evidence that ranged from different demographics of people from all walks of life. And the moment he published that, the entire Harvard Council was at his throat instantly. They didn't read the book. They didn't give him any opportunity to defend himself. And that's why he had to get a lawyer involved. And then the second that he offered to bring forth the evidence and the witnesses to testify that all the experiences that he wrote about in his book not only had documentation, but they were authentic, Harvard instantly let him out of that session, because they knew they were going to be put in a position where they would have to readjust their entire way of thinking. So that's just one example of how a lot of mainstream academics are threatened by this subject. And it's not an isolated incident. This has happened at majority of the institutions that are out there when it comes to this subject in particular, especially with consciousness. And that's probably the main reason why this subject matter is so what's the word I'm looking for? I hate to use the term, no pun intended, alienated. So the reason why people tend to steer away from this subject matter is because it ties into consciousness. Like all of the studies that happened with Dr. Bob John at Princeton's Engineering's Anomalies Research Lab, where they studied mind-matter interaction and consciousness, they have been published in peer-reviewed physics journals, quantified, authenticated, and confirmed that all the experiments proved unequivocally that conscious interfacing with your environment can influence the world around you. And that same kind of phenomena is associated with extraterrestrials. And there's no other academic university out there that's willing to acknowledge that data. It's because it all comes down to this biased, confrontational form of skepticism. It's because no one wants to accept the new information because it's going to potentially threaten their tenure position. It's going to make them have to rewrite their last book. It may not get them invited into the social circles of academia anymore. And that's exactly what happened with John E. Mack as an example. As soon as he published that book, he was ostracized and criticized and pushed out of all of his social circles in academia. So it's not a matter of people looking at this for the actual data and the information. They're looking at this to keep their careers intact, to make sure that they have a paycheck in the next 2 years, to make sure that they have a retirement, and to make sure that they're staying relevant in the mainstream academic system. So that's my interpretation of it. Thank you, Mark, for the comment.
All right, Pauline. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you for your presentation, Tyler. It's very intriguing to me, and I've been interested in this topic for a long time as a member of this culture, pop culture, movies. And when you're a kid growing up, you're always like, I want to see a UFO. And then when the day happens when you do see one, you're like, did I really see what I saw? And the thing is with the science is we have a science that can measure things that are measurable within the science that we have, within the technology that we have. And there are things outside of that we don't have the technology to measure. We don't have the understanding to grasp it. We don't really know what's going on out there. And I'm sure you know about Stephen Greer and his work with the CE5. I think you mentioned that's on your website. I think it's a really interesting way to try to connect with whatever these other beings are, whether they're extraterrestrial or interdimensional. Maybe they are what we have been calling angels or ghosts for millennia. And as Carol mentioned earlier, we've seen petroglyphs. We've seen drawings of little ETs in Africa, in Australia, in the Grand Canyon, in Chaco Canyon. We
Arizona.
see these things. Right, exactly. And it's just like, what is it? Where is this all coming from? And it is a taboo subject because, everybody, you bring up ET, like, all right, that's the crazy person in the room. We know who to avoid, Yeah. But it's a legitimate question. And unfortunately, it is like, it's been made fringe and it's looked at as, that's not real science. But it's a legitimate thing. When Newton was experimenting with with science, with the idea of gravity and all these things. He was doing alchemy.
Yeah. Mhm.
Alchemy was punishable by death.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so like here we have this thing that, you know, it's punishable. We don't kill people who are trying to research it, but we kill them in a different way. We kill them politically, we kill them socially.
Mhm.
And who knows, you know, like, let's look at it. I do think I do know a person who actually helped make some of those crop circles.
Mhm.
And
Totally.
she was so funny. We're in a car and we're driving along and she goes, so what do you guys think about crop circles? And we're all like, oh yeah, definitely aliens. And she's like listening to us, nodding quietly. She goes, all right, I helped make them. And then she explained this whole relationship she had developed traveling to this little town in England. And she would go back every few years and help them make a new one.
Yeah.
And they would sit in the cafes and hear people talking, oh, did you see the new one? The aliens were here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, great point. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a large fraction of them that are actually man-made. But if you were to do a side-by-side comparison between ones that have like a clear man-made characteristic to them, where the details aren't as sharp, and from an aerial point of view, there isn't as many intricacies compared to the ones that are 4 times the size, needlehead precision down to the degree of accuracy when they're in direct alignment with constellations and star formations. Like there's like a clear separation and distinction between the ones that are made by our intelligence and
Fair
our
enough.
level of architecture,
Right.
architecture. And then there's another level that appears to
Sure.
be created by some kind of superior intelligence.
It could be. It could be.
And I mean, there's actually a document that was featured in Jacques Vallée's book called Forbidden Knowledge 4. And for everyone who isn't familiar with Jacques Vallée's work, he's a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley. He was J. Allen Hynek's right-hand assistant for the Air Force Project Blue Book. And he's been researching the phenomenon of extraterrestrial contact for the last, I think, almost 50 years. And he has a document that was featured in that publication, Forbidden Knowledge 4, that is a CIA memorandum that states in detail how the Central Intelligence Agency has been staging extraterrestrial abductions for the last 40 years in the Americas, North America, Mexico, and Latin America, for the psychological warfare value. So a lot of the information that's out there, a lot of the phenomenon that's been documented, and a lot of the firsthand accounts that people have experienced have also been man-made. So there's a lot of saturation and there's a lot of confusion that has been deliberately placed into the subject matter, deliberately, to confuse things and to keep people on the fringe about what to believe and what not to believe. So that's why I believe what we're doing and going out and directly engaging the phenomenon is the best way to actually have an understanding, is to have your own experience and discover your own truth. Now, like what you mentioned earlier.
Are you doing the
go ahead.
CE5 meditation? Is that what you're talking about?
We're doing, we started out using CSETI's protocols, but then we realized that everybody is unique and there's no direct, proper, or like right way to go about doing this. So I think it's all about experimenting and figuring out what gets you the best results. If there's 8 billion people on the planet, there's potentially 8 billion different ways to drop into a deep state of meditation. So we try to keep an open mind as to all the potential avenues of contact that can be made. And that's really what we're trying to go out there and document. Now, what you mentioned earlier, I think the first point was we don't have the tools yet to document and record data of the phenomenon that could in fact be metaphysical. We actually do have an array of equipment that can record non-physical, or call it metaphysical phenomenon. There's actually an institution in Northern California called IONS, which is the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And it was founded by Apollo astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And the entire mission of that institution is to study consciousness and to record data that can be quantified and show that there is in fact mind-matter interaction. So we are having a conversation with them right now, actually, and we were supposed to do this, but then COVID-19 happened. We wanted to hold a contact event at their Earthrise Retreat Center in Northern California and hook up members of our team to an EEG machine so we can pick up their brain waves and their neurological activity and see if there's a correlation between the sightings we have in the sky and the brainwave activity and our trimeter, which is recording electromagnetic field readings. So there are different modalities we can use to record data, and we can cross-reference these different data points to see if there's anything that's anomalous. And that's what we're working on right now. So thank you for sharing.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Carol has a question.
I actually I kind of just wanted to throw something in there that might just be like a side rail. But just listening, like, it's a very interesting topic to me. And I fall on either side most times. Like, sometimes I believe and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I believe and sometimes I don't. And I just want to preface that with what I'm about to say. Part of the challenge for me is that, being a person of color, I have witnessed historically these systems that have been oppressive and have actually put us into categories of being stupid or ignorant or dumb. And now finally, 100 years later, 300 years after slavery, folks are like, oh no, they're not stupid. They're actually really smart people, right? And so when we're talking about this topic, I would like to just throw out there that it's coming from a Western civilization viewpoint. And when we start to really analyze what that viewpoint is, it tends to be Eurocentric, and it tends to be systems that we're operating under of oppression. And so I guess for me, part of the reason I sometimes fall on the fence of belief is because I know, coming from a community of color, that there was a time when folks in the Western civilization did not believe that we were human, right? And so this particular topic I could overlay with that experience, right? That just because we don't know everything about it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't exist or others don't exist. And so I just kind of want to throw that out there, just to kind of have that as a pondering point, because there have been numerous things in history, like what Pauline said earlier around what was legal, what was not legal, what was belief, what was not belief. And now all of a sudden it's been proven to be true, or, and it may take centuries for this to be proven to be true, but that doesn't mean that it's not true, right? So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, Carol, you made amazing points just now. And I truly feel in my heart where you're coming from, because those are very important aspects of our history to keep in mind. And I feel as though, that's a lot to unpack. The reason why this subject to me is so important in one facet is because, like what you just mentioned, like racism, like our human family deciding some people have more values and more rights than others, and vice versa, based on something as surface level as the pigmentation of their skin. Like, that's just an evil thing to appropriate with. Now, how can we begin to accept and integrate a reality where we may have an interaction with a life form that's radically different from us? It's like, if we can't overcome racism between different ethnicities of our human family, how are we supposed to overcome speciesism? Because that seems to be the next thing we may have to face, because we still have these mundane, superficial, and artificial ego-centered opposition with one another based on skin color, which is absolutely ridiculous. And if we want to talk about that component of it, which is I think is a very important component, if we talk about the civil rights movement back in the 60s and before the 60s, that started from the bottom up. It did not come from the top down. We didn't have our leaders in government saying they deserve to have the same rights as us. They deserve to sit on the same buses as us. They deserve to sit in the same restaurants. We didn't have that. And by no means at any point in my life have I ever experienced someone being prejudiced towards me, because I do have that natural born experience of being a white person. So I cannot say what it's like to be a Black individual and to experience firsthand those types of forms of systematic racism. But I've witnessed it, and it hits my heart in a very heavy way, because I look at everybody as equals. I don't care if you're Muslim or Buddhist or Catholic or Protestant or Mormon or atheist or yellow or Black. I don't see those things. I just see like the eyes looking back at me and the same singularity of consciousness that animates all of us and makes us sentient. And like that's the level we need to be looking at each other through. So like what I mentioned with the civil rights movement happening from the bottom up, this is what needs to happen with this subject with extraterrestrials. Because if we allow the governments and these other institutions that also delegated the civil rights movement the way they did, how are we supposed to trust them with delegating the subject of extraterrestrials? They could treat it as the exact same way. They could portray it as something that's totally not. So it's up to us to form like a cosmic civil rights movement to say, we know that they're here. We're not going to allow the governments to put fear into us about their presence. And we need to come together as a human family, holistically, regardless of what your background is, regardless of where you're from geographically, regardless of what your religious belief system is, regardless of your sexual orientation. And we just need to come together as one family, one species. And we need to approach this in a very peaceful, pluralistic way that is going to benefit the greater existence on our planet. So I'm really happy you brought that up, because it's actually, I guess, very synchronistic. I was looking into a lot of the old civil rights marches that happened with MLK Jr., because we're making a podcast right now and we're talking about that era, and just watching the original black and white clips of how powerful those times were and how many people stood up and activated and took to the streets to make that change happen. I feel as though for this subject, we need to have that same level of activism and that same level of participation, because this is going to be the next civil, social, and cosmic revolution that we're going to go through. And I think it's going to be a very unifying experience, because maybe our differences towards one another that are so minuscule may dissolve if we realize that there's a greater intelligence out there that surpasses us consciously and technologically, and they're sophisticated, and they're more sophisticated than us in every way, shape, and form. It's going to unify us together. And that's really what I want to see come of all of this. I want to just see all of the borders dissolve. You can't see borders from space. You can't see flags from space. You can't see the different details of people and their facial features and their color from space. You just see one planet that's floating out there in the infinite cosmos, and we are children of this planet. And that's what I want us to all realize collectively. That's really my mission behind all of this. So thank you, Carol, for sharing that.
Jimena, sister, yes.
I just wanted to add that there are not internal, external, or whatever we are planning them to be extraterrestrial, intraterrestrial, or whatever. They are supra intelligent, supra sentient, supra conscious, supra compassionate beings. And they are and always have been here to help, to guide us, to give us hints of technology, because as Einstein said, wisdom needs to be at the same level of technology. So they cannot give us technology, as you mentioned, Tyler, because we would self-destroy.
Yeah.
So it's very important to understand that these are times of unity, and these are times of exerting our best parts of trying to be at least reaching somehow these levels of consciousness that they have, because they are just like out of reach from us. We need to go through a lot of process, civilizations, types of civilizations, because right now there is another kind of civilization somehow we are giving birth to another civilization, right? So yeah, they are not external from us. They are kind of our so-called higher self is part of this higher consciousness, and we can reach it out when meditating, and we can reach it out when having a coherence of heart, and when we are harmonized and somehow vibrating in a higher frequency. So it's not at all external to us. And yeah, I've studied. I'm Mexican. I have the privilege of being in an earth that has been visited so many times, and I have gone to beautiful places to make contact with some of them. And I studied in an institute here in Mexico, which was founded by people that was contact. And there is a lot of research, a lot of things that I can share with you from the masters and the people that I studied with. I think we need to have a database of all this information, because it's time for people to know how to reach to this levels of consciousness, because that's the only way we're going to save ourselves, I guess. It's very important that we understand that meditation should be a habit, and that we should make a habit ourselves of also being people that gets rid of prejudices and gets rid of so many things that hinder us to be an evolutionated humanity. So it's in ourselves to prepare and to build and give birth to this new earth and this new civilization. So count with that if you want to meet with us. We steward here. We are some people stewarding here, and we like a lot deities, and we do sky watching, and we are always like so willing to see Mark Sims and what was the other guy's name? I forgot that Pauline said.
Dr. Greer?
Sorry?
Dr. Greer?
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Greer and everyone that can guide us, because they have a lot of experience of guiding people to know about this. It's not new civilizations, because they have been there like for so many centuries, but for us to be a new consciousness, to understand that they are here and they have been here ever with us. So yes, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I would love to share everything that I have from Mexico. Where are you right now? In United States?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, great.
So feel free to send me an email so we can connect. It's just info@contacttour.net. And so it's just info at our website. I can put it down here in the chat here in a moment. And
that would be
I'd love to connect, because we've already began organizing and indexing and archiving this massive database of information. So we're always looking we're always looking for people to contribute and provide different pieces of information that would be additive to that database. And I just feel for where our database is right now, if people dedicated a fair amount of their time to practice their due diligence and to go through that database, the materials in there are very persuasive and very compelling, and they're very detailed. We have documents from the NSA, NRO, OSI, FBI, CIA, DOD, Air Force, Navy, US Army, NASA, JPL, you name it. And we have documentation of all of them sharing an experience or an event or a testimony that occurred of incursions over their installations of extraterrestrial vehicles, the recovery of extraterrestrial assets, the transportation of extraterrestrial assets, foreign materials that have been collected from crashes, weapons being put up into space in order to engage extraterrestrials, the fact that there's counterintelligence programs out there that are still currently happening to control the general perception of extraterrestrials. There's so much material out there. There's more evidence of the existence of extraterrestrials than there is for the efficiency and the effectiveness of most of the pharmaceuticals that people take. And that's an actual fact. And that's statistically proven. There's more materials available showing that we are more than likely being visited by a higher intelligence that's off planet than the pharmaceuticals people take are actually benefiting their health. And that's been proven for the last 20 years. And I say that with absolute confidence because that is the case. So it's just a matter of presenting this information to the general public in a way that's digestible and palatable so they can begin to integrate this information into their day-to-day life. And like the profound implications of this information being exposed to people is going to change every aspect of our civilization. Nothing will be unchanged from it. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful conversation. You know, I dare say the hyperobject would not have been complete without this conversation. So Tyler, you'll hear me say this a lot on this channel. With you here, now it's perfect.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to just come in here and just share our experiences and our assessment of the landscape of disclosure. And I'm really here just to advocate for our entire human family growing and developing our consciousness to really realize the cosmic context of what it is to be human. Like, what does it mean to be human outside of our day-to-day lives? What does it mean to be human off our planet? Like, there has to be some kind of greater role that we play in this infinite cosmos. And that's what we're going to explore. And that's what we're going to try our best to uncover and find out. And perhaps interactions with non-human intelligences is going to be the catalyst for the next step in our evolutionary process. So that's what we're here to share. And thank you guys so much.
Love it. Well, Tyler, mi casa su casa, please, truly from my heart, you are at home here. This is your home. Come anytime. No, seriously. And, you know,
thank you.
Fridays are typically our biggest day. We have the 24-hour collective intelligence block party. And you see, my whole thing for the past 7.5 years, what I've focused, you know, my main bread and butter, not that I make money at it, but this is what I focus on, is collective intelligence. And the whole topic of collective intelligence would not be complete without the rest of the hyperobject being the intelligence,
absolutely,
being the intelligence of the universe. And I really love the way you framed it earlier. I took some notes on it. Can't wait to follow up and have more focused conversations on this. But you talked about non-human terrestrial intelligence. And that inspires me to come up with a whole new definition for collective intelligence, which is non-individual collective intelligence, because everything we've been taught to learn is my intelligence is right here in the confines of so many cubic centimeters of gray matter that I own. And that's it. That's intelligence. Give me a bleeping break.
I feel as though that there actually is no individual intelligence. I mean, there's like theoretically, yes, your mind stores information and your physical hard drive that's in between your eyes is able to retain memory databases of things that you've experienced. But if we're going to go into a more philosophical context of what intelligence is, consciousness isn't some kind of biological epiphenomenon that is the occurrence of chemicals interacting inside of our brains and then gives us the illusion of us being some kind of sentient being. Consciousness is a permeating singularity that connects all points in space and time, and it animates all living things. So there is an akashic conscious knowing of intuition that is a faculty that everyone in our human family possesses. It's actually called ESP in certain fields of research, called extrasensory perception, in which people have the ability to remote view and tap into deep states of meditation and extract information that they didn't previously know and they have no experience with. And it actually turns out to be accurate, discernible information that you can pull from meditative experiences. So intelligence, to me, not to go off topic, but intelligence is just the creation of all beingness and oneness. There's only one mind in the universe. We all share that one mind. We're all expressions of that one mind. So that's my take on intelligence.
I love it. Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate being here. Any chance I have to have a conversation with open-minded people, and even people that actually, I love having conversations more with people that are skeptical or on the fence about it, because it just exercises that muscle in me to have conversations with people that may not have the same belief systems. And that's how we move the conversation forward. By not just participating in echo chambers of agreement, we have to actually have discussions with people that have totally and radically different ways of thinking. And that's how progress is made.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Oh my goodness.
So thank you, guys.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we are now almost 8 hours in to the press conference. And
that's incredible.
Isn't it? I mean,
that's wild.
This is what press conferences should be. We're not government controlled. We're not corporate controlled. There's no advertising. There's no BS. There's, there's just open sharing. Everyone gets a crack at the mic. There's not a single person on this planet who could not have been here and showed up and said, hey, I want to talk for 5 minutes, and would have been denied the opportunity to talk. Everyone gets to talk here. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next up, we're going to be Danielle and Professor Peanut. And I don't think either of them are here at the moment. If they come back, they get to talk, of course.
But thank you, guys. I do have to go. I've been here for actually like 2 hours longer than I expected. So I moved a few things to make it. So thank you everyone for your time. I hope everyone's doing great and everyone's well during our transition out of the COVID era. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Well, I'm about to present some mind-blowing stuff, so feel free to stick around. I'll be very concise, but no pressure. Cool. I know you got stuff you need to do, so don't worry about it.
Thank you so much, guys. Everyone have a great rest of your day or evening or afternoon, wherever you are.
You too, Tyler. Thanks so much.
Reach out to us,
Bye-bye.
Tyler, because we're in Los Angeles, food healers, and you could come to our event.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah. Before I get out of here, I'm going to drop my email into the chat. And that's like a direct line to me. I check that email multiple times a day. And also, if you guys can put your email in there as well, that'd be great.
Let's do it.
Cool. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, buddy. All right. See you soon. All right. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Jamen Shively speaks. That's right. Okay. All right. Well, that was kind of anticlimactic.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's most people's reaction, Tyler. You're definitely not alone there. So anyway, what I'm going to present on is going to be, the title of my talk really has 3 parts. One will take 30 seconds, another will take about 1.5 minutes, and the third will take about 5 minutes. So this will all be over and done with in 10 minutes. The 30-second one is very simple. We need a new story for humanity, and it's emergent from all these conversations that we're having right here today in the press conference, and so many other conversations that need to be in the press conference that aren't here yet, right? This is like, the best, most powerful, most urgent stuff that everyone needs to know about, all encapsulated in just 8 hours. So just sit back and watch for 8 hours and you'll be all set. No, just kidding. We've got to find ways to synthesize this. That's part of the challenge and the opportunity. So we'll get there. But anyway, a new story for humanity. We all know we need it. It's urgent. The old story is completely omnicidal. And we've seen great examples of that today. Okay, so that was the 30-second piece. The 1.5 minute piece is called Dear Umair. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about when I say Umair. I know Sarah does. Okay. Umair is Umair Hake. And, oh, thank you, sweetheart. This is my partner, Melissa.
Hi, Jimena. Hi, guys. Lots of love.
Thank you, my darling. So, Dear Umair. So Umair Hake, one of my favorite writers, he cranks out like 6 articles per week on medium.com. Really powerful stuff covering, pretty much every topic we've covered today, with the possible exception of extraterrestrial intelligence, etc. And he's got an audience of tens of thousands of people who are, on average, deep thinking, progressive, open-minded, open heart, and really want to see humanity and the world transform. So a few months ago, we started recording for a series, which we haven't published yet in any big way. It's there on my YouTube channel, and I guess all of 500 plus people who subscribe to my YouTube channel can see it. But we haven't brought it to Umair's attention yet, or to his articles. And so what we're going to do is I've had some major family disruptions just in the past, month plus. So it's been a pretty intense time. But we're getting there, and we will publish this soon. I can't give a promise exact when. I'm about to catch a plane tomorrow to fly to deal with other family stuff, and then another flight a week later to deal with other family stuff. And so it's just like kind of a bit of a hamster wheel, but we'll get there soon. When we publish it, Umair is going to have the same reaction as Sarah just put up in her screen. Here, I'll put it up for you on my screen. It's going to be like, whoa, right? I mean, like, let's say you're, Marc-Antoine sitting there in Montreal, and, you blog and this and that. And then all of a sudden you hear that some group has started some series called Dear Marc-Antoine. You better believe you're going to check it out. You're going to be like, whoa, what the heck who are these people? What are they talking about? And from the get-go, he's going to find this treasure trove, because what we do in a typical Dear Umair session is we read his article. I typically just read his article top to bottom, and then we all talk about it, right? It becomes the starting point for a really rich conversation. You see that? And you see the dual media aspect of it, right? Yeah, so we haven't published the website yet, but it's going to be dearumair.org. That's going to be the website. There's nothing there right now, nothing to see. But it's going to be dearumair.org, and it's going to start out just as a playlist of all these different recordings that we do twice a week now, every Monday and every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, right here. So we're up to, I don't know, over 15 recordings so far. One of the last ones was Dear Umair, meet Professor Salter, and Stephen Salter just goes off for like 40 minutes, and it's just like, whoa, right? Then we did another one Monday this week it's all about the boops. What are the boops? Global warming. It's all about the boops. Bear with me as I do this kind of cheesy musical interlude. So what's up with the boops? Well, what's up indeed? So this comes directly from Professor Stephen Salter's presentation from earlier today. It's all recorded. One boop, he defined the term. It's the total energy consumed by humanity in 1 year, in all forms. You know, oil, gas, wind, solar, firewood, hydroelectric, geothermal. You get my point, right? You know, animals pulling carts, as disgusting as that is, all those forms of energy. One boop in 1 year, all of humanity's energy consumption. So look on this slide, follow my mouse. Okay, yeah, follow my little arrow. This black dot here represents one boop. Okay, this is from Professor Salter's slide. These orange dots, they look a little smaller, but they're supposed to be the same size. Each of these, what do these orange dots represent? Anyone want to take a guess? Only guess if you don't know the answer. Okay, these orange dots represent
Atoms.
Huh?
Atoms.
Good guess. No, but good guess. Okay, it's a precise number. If you were to
The days we have left for surviving.
No, we actually have a lot fewer than that, but anyway, good guess. Each of these orange dots represents one. Thank you, Marc Antoine. Very good guess. Mark nailed it. The sun energy input to the earth. It's the total amount of, actually wrote down exactly how Professor Salter said it. It's the solar energy coming in, right? I don't know if that includes that portion that got reflected away or not, but that's a small difference. It's the total incoming solar energy coming to the planet, right? So the sum total of everything that we're burning is that one black dot. The total amount of incoming solar energy in visible spectrum coming from the sun to the earth, 9,000 of those. 9,000 boops. That's some serious boopage. All right. Well, what do we do about that? Well, first of all, let's focus on the black dot, the one portion of this that's, you know, ostensibly under our control. What a laugh. Anyway, that's the black dot. That's what we burn, right? We don't have to burn all this. We could stop burning XYZ, we could shrink it, whatever. But let's look at, you know, what are the impacts of that black dot, that one boop that we're, you know, generating, that we're consuming, that ultimately ends up in heat, right? Remember from high school physics, whatever energy is consumed, like running a refrigerator or a vacuum cleaner, ultimately it ends up as heat, right? Well, one big question among many, okay, so this is not the only interesting question, but one question among many is what becomes of that heat? Well, it turns out that only about 1.5% of that heat, this circle represents that one black dot boop, only about 1.5% of that heat is actually retained, right? The vast majority of it goes out into space, right? So that sounds like good news. It's like, whew, you know, a boop of energy. You had me worried there for a second, right? But since only 1.5% of it's retained, I guess it's not that big of a deal, right? Well, there's only one problem. It's not just the black dot boop that leaves 1.5% of its heat behind. There are the 9,000 orange dot boops to account for as well. Well, let's do the math, butthead. If each boop leaves behind 1.5% of its heat, then what is 9,000 orange dot boops times 1.5%? What does that equate to? Did you bring your calculator, butthead? Yeah, did you bring your calculator? Well, 1.5% times 9,000 boops equals 137 boops of heat. That's how much is getting retained. That's how much is getting retained. What becomes of all that heat? Well, yeah, we're getting hotter, right? But just like Professor Guy McPherson's proverbial martini glass, and here's where it gets really scary, okay, is if I'm at a party on a Friday night, right, and I'm holding a martini with a couple of ice cubes in it, as long as there's ice in the glass, the temperature is 0 degrees centigrade, right? Freezing, right? That's just the temperature. Whether it's two big mammoth blocks of ice in the glass or just a little sliver left, temperature is the same, right? What's happening is, a fraction of a boop of heat is flowing from my hot hand, right, to the glass, and it's melting the ice, melting the ice, melting that. But the temperature stays the same. What happens if you were to plot out the temperature of that martini as a function of time? It'd be flatline. Oh, until the last sliver of ice melts, and then hockey stick. We're pre-hockey stick at this point. There's still ice in the glass. There's just a teeny tiny little bit left, about 20% or less than 20% left. Remember that slide? If you didn't see it, watch early on in the press conference. Professor Stephen Salter, you got to see his presentation. It's profound. We're almost out of ice. And when we hit that inflection point, boom, all bets are off. Professor Guy McPherson talked about it. When asked how much time do we have left, he said, well, we're almost out of Arctic ice. Okay, we've got 137 boops heating the planet. We're chilling right now, just sitting back, smoking a cigarette, eating a cheeseburger, saying, proverbially, don't take me too literally, Sarah, we're proverbially just chilling, saying we're cool, right? Because there's still ice left in the glass. The martini is still cold. What happens when the ice is gone? Spike. Okay. So of that 137 boops of heat, I'd like to see the exact breakdown. We'll calculate it. I'm sure there's papers written on it. How could there not be? How much of that's gone to melt the ice and how much of it's gone to heat the ocean? Those are the two big absorbers of heat, right? And once the ice is gone, all bets are off, and it's a double whammy. Not only is there no more, bank account of ice to absorb the heat, but there's no more of that ice to reflect sunlight back into space, especially during the summer months, and that much more heat. Instead of 137, it's probably going to be, 187 boops. Oops. Right? We need a serious boop reduction program. We need to reduce the boops that are retained, right? How do you do that? There's only one way to do it quickly, and that's to reflect sunlight back into space. That's it. That is it. So now the only question remaining is, what is the portfolio of solar radiation management systems that we implement? What percentage of the reflection is going to come from marine cloud brightening? What percentage from land-based mirrors? What percentage from ocean-based mirrors? What percentage from ICE 9/11? What percentage from desert canopies? What percentage from the ping pong ball solution? That's it, right? Right now, we don't have one red penny in that portfolio. We need billions in that portfolio before next summer, okay? It's all about the boops, and we need to do a serious boop reduction program. Hot boops, just a bit too much. So we need some serious boop reduction. And SRM is the only way to get us there by next summer, which is when it's predicted, either next summer or the summer after that, most likely next summer, an ice-free Arctic if we don't do boop reduction. Any questions? It's the heat, stupid. I'm not talking to anyone in this room. I'm just saying it's the heat, stupid. And we're really going to be stupid if we let it continue on its path, because we'll be dead. Not a lot of intelligence left in a dead cranium. No, we'll be dead. I mean, dead. It's a runaway train. This is our last chance to stop it. Carol, yes, go for it.
Sorry, my mic was on mute. I think somebody answered my question. I was also just like, my original question was, how does population growth tie into that? But it's really hard to reduce population in a year, so I guess that doesn't really even compute.
Well, it's gotten pretty easy right now with the way pandemic being treated, but that's not a good solution. I mean, the question is, can we have a sustainable ecosystem at the high population we have? That's debated. I'm not sure. What I'm sure of is we cannot have a sustainable ecosystem at the current population and middle-class lifestyles. That's absolutely a given.
Well, I mean, I think we can actually have way better than a middle-class lifestyle. See, we're equating middle-class lifestyle with big McMansions, right? In my, and big cars and all that kind of stuff. In my life, I've lived in, you know, big places, and then I've traveled where I didn't have any place at all. And my happiness is anti-correlated with the size of the dwelling I live in. The bigger the house, the more isolated, depressed, and even at times suicidal I have felt, right? So middle-class lifestyle is a formula for, you know, upper class lifestyle is a formula for misery, right? The most miserable people I know are the billionaires. I know a handful of billionaires. They're the most miserable people I know. They're not necessarily evil. They're just the most miserable. And the happiest people I know are the people with barely anything in terms of monetary value.
But doesn't that also determine or depend on how you redefine middle class? I mean, like, if everybody was middle class but shared their housing, right, with like multiple people or multiple families where you're actually sharing resources, that to me seems like, I mean, there are certain lifestyles that you could still live, right? Like, I mean, which is what I'm pushing for with the BIPOC tiny art house communities, in terms of having a big house, but it's shared, right? The resources in that house are shared, and the food is shared, everything's shared. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know.
No, I agree. I don't mean we have to live a miserable life. And I agree that there's a vision of middle class with this very, but I do think that even, I did mean kind of middle class, and people do expect to take their vacations in the South and take the plane and own a car and own an individual house. I'm not sure how sustainable that is at scale, at, you know, 7 billion human scales.
Yeah, so
but I also don't really think that like apartment living is, oh, sorry. I also don't think that apartment living is also sustainable. Like, and in Seattle, that's what it's the solution, is more big, huge apartment complexes to house more people, right? But I just think that like we're getting at a tipping point where there's going to be electricity outages, there's going to be water shortages, there's going to be all this stuff happening, and those large buildings are not going to be sustainable. Like, it's just not a possibility. And I don't think that we're looking at this critically. Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're on the same page, Mark, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, we're at a stage now where the real question is not, hey, is this sustainable? Yes, no, I don't know, our lifestyle. We're at a point now where the house is on fire and we need to put out the fire. And then we can talk about, sharing the house, divvying it up, turning it into apartments, leveling the thing and starting over with teepees, whatever. But right now the house is on fire. The kids are in the attic. If we want to survive, if we want life to survive, we've got to put out the fire. Right now, it's all about the boops, right? I sometimes use the analogy of like a dysfunctional family where, like the dad's alcoholic, the mom's on Quaaludes, the oldest teenage son is a dropout, the teenage daughter is screwing around, whatever. They've just got gazillion problems. Oh, and the house is on fire. Okay, so what does the first phone call need to be made to like the dad's AA sponsor, to the mom's doctor, to the kid's truant officer? How about 911? Hey, fire department, we got a fire here. Okay, that's the first call. I'm not saying that's going to solve all our problems. I'm just saying that's the first call we need to make. Right now, it's all about the boops. We need a major boop reduction program, period, full stop, period.
Well,
Okay?
the problem also is that there, like, it goes back to what you just said earlier in terms of how full is that bucket, right? Like, there aren't even enough firefighters or fire departments to put out the fires. So,
No.
There are going to be fires that are going to be running rampant, like, for decades.
No.
It's not even,
That's true. I'm sort of speaking metaphorically about the planet just overheating out of control, right? That we can actually do something about it, which is what Professor Stephen Salter presented earlier today. I don't know if you were here for that, but he presented Marine Cloud Brightening. It's a must-see, absolute must-see. And I might as well just screen share part of it now. Why not?
But just when you say it's about the boops, no, it's about the retention budget. The number is not the 9,000, it's the 1.5%. And our carbon budget acts on the 1.5%, which is much more sensitive than our drop in the ocean of 9,000 solar boops.
Well, wait a second. So here's the thing. The 1.5% operates on any heat that's happening, whether it's human generated or from the sun.
I agree.
Yeah,
precisely. So that's why the 1.5% matters.
Well, yeah,
that we're changing 9,000 to 1,001 doesn't.
No,
we're
exactly.
Changing the 1.5% matters. So I agree that on one hand, it's all about the energy budget, but it's our impact on the 1.5% that matters, not our energy utilization. It's our carbon budget.
Yeah, and the thing is, see that number 1.5%, it used to be 0% when we were in balance, right? And then before that, it was negative when we were going into an ice age, right? Yep. We weren't retaining enough heat. We had the opposite problem. Now we're retaining way too much heat. And the only way to first bring it back to zero is solar radiation management, reflecting sunlight back into space. That's it. The greenhouse blanket that we've got is what we've got. We can bring that down over the course of decades by planting trees and all that, but those trees are only going to have a shot if we cool the planet. In an exponentially overheating planet, all those trees burn up, all the little saplings that, people with long hair like myself plant and feel good about, and then we go smoke dope at the end of the day to celebrate. They're going to all burn up in flames in an exponentially overheating planet. It's all about the boops, and the only way to deal with the boops in the time frame we've got, which is months, is solar radiation management, such as marine cloud brightening. Okay, so let me just share a little bit of marine cloud brightening from was it Monday this week that we had the meeting? Anyway, here it is. So this is from our Monday meeting. Intelligence. as being the key driver of this entire holistic process. Because, so with that, are there any comments from anyone in the room about, I'm just going to go right to
they were
Steve.
predicting how much the
Okay, check this out. Here's where he talks about how much the IPCC was predicting that the reduction in ice would be. Look, see all this soot that's accumulated over Greenland from all the forest fires and everything? That black stuff is now absorbing sunlight. It used to be reflecting sunlight. This used to be a giant mirror. Now the thing's just melting like crazy. Let me let Professor Salter speak.
and that's now absorbing heat. This is showing you that we really shouldn't trust the IPCC that much, because they were predicting how much the ice would be changing. Their range of estimates was this blue path down here. The average is the black line, and the red is what actually happened. So the IPCC are not good at predicting how quickly things are going to go. This was a very recent events of what's happening in Africa and Australia at the same time. And this can be linked to the temperature gradient across the Indian Ocean. It's called the Indian Ocean Dipole. And the next one is this diagram of the Keeling curve, which is remorselessly rising. This is perhaps a slight reduction in the acceleration here. And along here, I've got all the previous COP conferences. And a statistician looking at that data on its own might come to the conclusion that having conferences is going to increase the CO2 concentration. We don't think that's really the truth, but the evidence is that it is. Somebody said repeating an experiment and getting different results. At the moment, the policy is to try and cut down emissions of carbon to zero by 2050. And I would argue that this is necessary, but it's inadequate. We will be left with all the greenhouse gases we've got in the atmosphere at the moment, plus all the ones which we'll be emitting between now and the zero date. So that isn't enough. We have to do it, but it isn't enough. We have to do some removal of carbon from the atmosphere, and we have to do some direct cooling. Right, the next slide here is showing with a little black dot here, the total human energy consumption in 2020 of all forms: oil, gas, coal, nuclear, wind, tidal, the whole lot is the area of that. And that information is to be compared with the solar input, which is this lot here. The numbers I've got for this came from BP, who produce an energy analysis statistics, which are really, really useful, with a lot of information there. And in honor of them, I'm calling this a boop. That's the amount of energy that we use in a year. And there's 9,000 boops of solar energy coming in. That means that really quite a small change in the solar input is going to solve the problem, which is very reassuring. Okay, well, now the next.
You're muted there, Jamen.
Oh, thank you. Okay, now what he doesn't talk about here is either the 1.5% or 137 boop net retention, etc. I don't think Stephen Salter is hiding anything. I just question, has he done the math? So I did the research, and came up and derived the numbers 1.5% and 137 boops of net retention. Okay. But from what he just said, hey, you know, we're burning this much. Oh, but there's all this, just a slight reduction in reflectivity. He's actually right. I mean, you know, a slight. I mean, if we wanted to bring it to net zero, not net zero carbon, net zero heat. It's about the heat, right? Not so much the carbon. It's about the heat at this point. We'd need to reflect away 137 boops of net. We'd probably have to reflect away. Anyway, it gets a little complicated, but it's not that complicated. But, you know, 137 is 1.5% of all this. We need to knock off 1.5% of all this boops, which is a little or a lot, depending on how you look at it. But let's cut to the chase of what the solution is that Stephen Salter proposes. And it is these amazing vessels that spray ocean water into the air, create these droplets that create these ultra bright white clouds that reflect sunlight into space. This is all the segment that we haven't even published yet called Dear Umair, Meet Professor Salter. Because you know what? We need our buddy Umair to write about this with the passion that characterizes Homeboy. We need Umair to get on top of this, right? And just shake it up, baby, right? And because then what's going to happen is you're going to have not, you know, 50 people at the next press conference, but 5,000. And I'm not joking when I say that. We've come up with ways that we can actually scale this very quickly into the thousands and hit a critical mass of collective intelligence to basically bring this to the world, bring it to the major media, to governments, to the financial sectors, academia, et cetera, right? Because until I did the math, until I saw that slide, I didn't even know about the term boop, right? And I'm like, wait a second, boop, one boop, 9,000 boops. All right, let's do the math. How much of that 9,000 is actually getting retained? Oh, 137 boops. We need some major boop reduction, right? It's all about the boops, right? And with that, we've got a meme that actually makes people laugh, right? And the inner psychologist inside of us knows that once you get people laughing, you're more than halfway across the river at that point. See, because right now it's just kind of all this technical mumbo jumbo, and well, isn't it controversial? Aren't they in disagreement whether the planet's heating or cooling? I don't know. Duh. Hey, where are we going to dinner tonight? How about the steakhouse? That'd be kind of fun. I really like that T-bone that we got last time. And just kick the can down the road. Why don't you? Right? It's time to break out the boops. You know, boops. Either you get it or you don't. Okay, we've got to make it real simple. It's about the boops. Right? It's all about the boops. And we need a planetary boop reduction program. And yeah, we need to get people laughing and we need to get people arguing. Oh, what do they mean, boops? Oh, show me the math. All right, here's the math. Meet Professor Salter. Dear Umair, meet Professor Salter. Yeah, that's right. Umair needs to get into this and all of his audience. And when they do, thousands will come pouring in to join the conversation because that's the next step. Okay, now that we know that the planet's on, I mean, we are seriously on fire. It's way worse than what I thought. When you look at the energy balance, it's not about the temperature so much. Temperature is a trailing indicator. Only when finally the ice is melted, then the temperature spikes. At that point, it's over. We're dead. Right? And come on, it's about the heat. It's not about the temperature yet. Temperature is a byproduct. We've got to get to the root of it. The root of it is we've got a serious boop retention program, and we need a serious boop reduction program to not just stop it, but to then reverse it. Right? Get this much reflectivity, and you've stopped the overheating. Now we're flatline. We're still way too hot. ice keeps melting, forest fires keep burning. We need to reduce it. We need to shed heat at the rate of 137 per year-ish, maybe 200 per year. I don't know. We have to figure it out. How fast do we want to cool it down? But we certainly don't want to do this. Now, what happens when we achieve net zero carbon emissions? Anyone want to take a guess as to what will happen with the whole boop situation? Okay, when we achieve net zero carbon emissions, and Guy McPherson talked about this at the very beginning of the press conference today, we lose the aerosol masking effect. What happens then? We'll see a sharp increase from maybe 137 boops per year of accumulated heat, probably to north of 200. Because we still have all the greenhouse gases trapping the heat, but now we've lost a significant portion of, inadvertent, but nonetheless very real solar radiation management, SRM, in the form of all those particulates. All those dirty emissions, they're our friend. They're keeping us alive right now, or at least they're slowing the rate at which we're getting to the inflection point of the hockey stick. So we got to get our heads screwed on straight about this. And the best way I know is the boop. We got to start talking boopage. It's all about the boops. Hot boops, just too much. So we need a serious boop reduction program. See, that makes you laugh. That makes you laugh. That's a good thing. That's a good indicator. That's a good leading indicator that we're going somewhere. It's about the boops. All right, we're now 8.5 hours into the press conference. Shall we give ourselves a break, or does anyone have any final words? I pass the talking feather. Claire, welcome back.
I'm only here for a little bit longer, but who's listening to you? Who of the people that need to hear you are listening to you?
100%.
Anybody in the government?
No,
Anybody
100% of the people who need to be listening are listening, because it's these people in this room who are among the most committed. And we're the ones who are going to invite way more people to come to the next press conference. We're going to say to all our best friends and relatives, see, friends don't let friends not come to the press conference. So so 100% of the people who need to hear this are hearing this right now. It's as simple as that. And yes,
this has all been recorded, right?
It's being recorded.
So I'm saying that we could send this. I mean, if we have any connections at universities, environmentally conscious or public health universities, right? They might be interested.
Here's the thing. Don't go so much to the folks at universities with neckties and short hair and all that. See that dude Alexar there with the blue t-shirt? Look for dudes like that, right? With cool headphones and post-it notes on the wall and stuff like that. That's our target right now, because the people at the universities are the ones who've got something to defend, a salary, tenure, all that kind of stuff. And just like Tyler was talking about the previous segment, they're the ones who are most resistant to this kind of radical change. There's a lot of resistance to the wake-up call.
What about the progressive senators and House people? There's a bunch into the green.
They're good at getting votes. They're not good at getting anything done. They're good at getting votes. That's why they're there. Alexa, sorry to pick on you.
I think it would have been really amazing. Like I unfortunately didn't get to attend the very beginning of the press conference, but I almost feel like your presentation should be the lead. Like it should be the very first part of the press conference. Just because it to me is like, I don't want to say that it is the most important thing, but it feels like it is the most important thing. And it is imperative for people to know this stuff. Like when there was maybe like 50, 70 people on, that to me would have been like the perfect. So that's just a suggestion for the next press conference, is that you lead with you. Because it's critical. It's critical information, and you know, I have been operating under the assumption that we have 5 or 6 years, and we don't even have a year. Like, and that's what's scary. And I think that is what's going to move people to action. And the more people that are moved towards action, and I do agree with you, I think that it's going to happen from the grassroots up. It's not going to happen in the institution. It's not going to happen with politicians. It's not going to happen with the people who are the gatekeepers, because that is why they are called the gatekeepers. To keep the system the way it is, you know. And I just, yeah, that's my suggestion for the next press conference, is that you lead with this scientific evidence and the video and the information that you just shared, because that is the umbrella that holds everything that all of us have been talking about in terms of systems change and what needs to happen in the world today. So that's my input around that. And I thank you for sharing that, because it makes me feel like I'm on the right road, even though I feel like I'm going at a snail's pace. I feel like this is information that I can use and I can like do something with, right? As opposed to the information that we're getting that's muddled and watered down and, you know, not being taken seriously and all this other stuff. So, yeah.
Can you put this presentation on YouTube?
It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube. As soon as I can get it on there. It'll
Gotta go far and wide. It really does.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wait till you watch the last half hour before you jump back on, Claire. It's gonna make it's gonna change your life. And thanks to you, it will change many other people's lives, because you're gonna say, you gotta watch this, and they'll watch it because you're Claire, right? That's what I'm saying. Look for the Claires, the Carols, and the Alexars of the world. Not the guys in suits with big salaries.
What about people like Jeff Sachs? His wife sends me all his essays and things that he's writing the right stuff.
Well, if he's not talking boobs, he's missing the boat, because it's all about the boobs and boob
production. You can tell him. I can give you his email or her email.
I'll be delighted to, but I think it's more effective coming from you to his wife.
Yeah.
Because he listens to his wife.
That's
true. His wife listens to you. So send this to his wife and we'll be on track. But you got to watch it first, of course, and then, you know, write up your own little summary and your own little words. Like, you got to see this. Show me where this guy's wrong, you know, and I'll go back. I'll happily go back to sleep. But if he's right, you need to wake up, and you need to wake up your husband and say, hey, Jeff, it's all about the boobs.
And I think that one of the other things that's really interesting about what you just presented, and I've been saying this for like at least 2 years, especially in the environmental community and with scientists that I've been talking to, is this idea that we still have time, right? And part of that challenge is that because people think that we still have time, there's no urgency. Right? There's no urgency. But from the stuff that you just basically presented, the urgency is clear, and it's very real, and it's unpredictable, right? So everything that they've already predicted is not predictable. You know, because it's never happened before. So how could that predictability even be realistic? Like, that to me is what is really crazy about the whole thing, is that it's like people are like, well, you know, the statistics say this, the statistics say that. Yeah, but it's never happened before. And so how can we actually even rely on those statistics? And they're starting to say that now, that, oh my God, our predictions were wrong. Well, hello, it's organic. It's something that is not, you know, happening according to human man-made statistical calculations, right? It's exponential. And so for me, that is a really critical linchpin that because it's an organic thing and it's much larger than our ability to conceive of it, it's not predictable. And once it hits that chart, like you said, the hockey stick, right? We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we know what's going to happen, but we can't predict when or how or what, or, you know what I mean? Like once it hits that point, it's out of our control. There's like no going back. So that to me is a really critical point as well, is that no matter how many predictions we want to put out there in the atmosphere or realm of probability, our human calculations are never going to be correct because it's an entire ecosystem. It's the world. And it's going to operate the way it's going to operate. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm having a side conversation. It's been so difficult for the environmentalists to find the right note. And I think they made strategic mistakes, but it's tough because it's like, oh, if we say it's too much of a disaster, it'll be defeatism. And then if we give a date and the date is not exactly right, we'll be crying wolf and nobody will believe us when the urgency is still real, even if we get the date wrong. And but there's so many weird calculations that they have to do because there is such a strong push against making big change that some of them are trying to be very strategic. And I'm not saying they made all the right strategic decisions, I think not, but I'm saying it's also, there was a strong incentive to not make it sound, well, we don't know, it could, you know, the earth could blow up tomorrow, because that is a way to get discredited. And that is human nature, because human nature is not good at thinking about statistics and thinking that maybe it'll blow up tomorrow with, you know, X% chance. And then it doesn't happen tomorrow. That doesn't mean that the reasoning was wrong. I mean, it was right. I mean, you have to look at the whole bloody system of evidence that nobody has the time to go back to, right? It's difficult to sound these kinds of alarms of unprecedented catastrophes that nobody has any experience of. And so everybody's intuition is that, no way, because we haven't not experienced it in our lifetime. That's, I'm not saying it's, I mean, that's a real problem.
But I think also part of that, I mean, and you nailed it, is that they don't want to sound the alarm and sound like, you know, and discredit themselves. But to me, that is ego. That's like, and it's not ego like consciously. I guess what I'm saying is that comes through because they're gatekeeper and they have their livelihood, right? And so when you have your livelihood to contend with, it's you do have to be careful, and you do have to like not just sound the alarm and be like crying wolf, right? So I get that, and I totally understand that. But on the flip side of it, there's this other side of the coin that if nobody cries wolf, then we're all screwed, right? Like
I totally agree. No, but I'm saying I'm not sure it was ego. I'm saying it's also, it's like if nobody believes us, they won't do anything.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, somebody should have cried wolf earlier. That's it.
Well, two things. Number one, better late than never.
Well, I think they've been trying to cry wolf for 70 years. Like, I mean, I've read a lot of environmental stuff from before
50?
I was born that people have been trying to cry, you know, and nobody's listening.
Well, but
yeah, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, they've been trying, but guess, you know, they've been missing one thing. They've been missing.
It's all about the boobs.
It's all about the boobs. They've been missing the boobs. Because once you start talking boobs, then it's like, okay, I get it, right? And because you hit the nail on the head, Carol, there's a flip side of the coin. There's duality. Humans get duality. They get conflict. That's what we're wired for, conflict, right? And right now, humanity as a whole, the whole scientific community, the politicians, et cetera, they're like, you know, a fire company, a bunch of firefighters standing out in front of a burning orphanage smoking cigarettes and saying, you really think the building's going to collapse? I don't know. We never really seen this kind of fire happening. This is a Maybach, right? This is built like what, 120 years ago? Yeah, that's about right. I don't know. Hey man, pass the Marlboros, right? And then I'm like, in this case, me is like the firefighter who shows up and says, hey, put those damn cigarettes out. It's time for us to start blasting this building. When's it going to collapse? I don't know either, but guess what? I don't even want to see it collapse. Let's blast it with everything we've got. And then you know what happens? Bifurcation. Humans get bifurcation. Am I on the side that's going to sit back and smoke cigarettes, or am I going to be the ones to hold the hose and start dousing this thing? So we get bifurcation. A bunch of people are going to follow. The most responsible amongst us, the most ethical amongst us, the most awake amongst us, the most dialed in amongst us. All of us here are going to answer the call. The people who are going to keep smoking cigarettes, you know, it's kind of a waste of time to even try to talk with them. They're going to smoke until the last cigarette is burned down to the butt, right? It's butts versus boops. Take your pick, right? I'm going with the boops.
Well, I heard an interview with someone on NPR who wrote a book about how to talk to people who don't agree with you. And he tried it out with all kinds of people. And he said that what works is listening and let them feel like you really care about them. And then little by little, they start to listen to you. Very, very slow, but you can't argue and fight. They don't listen. They just get more entrenched.
Yeah.
So I think for me, what's also interesting about what you just said, Claire, is there's also this theory around what does it take to create a change in a system-wide change, and it only takes 3% of the population, right? Only 3% of the population. That's not a lot of people. And if we can hit that tipping point, all of this can change. And so it's not even about changing the people who are not on board. It's not about changing the people who are middly on board. There's this really amazing video about how to create a leader. It's on TED Talks, and I've shown it to all my classes and all my students. And it takes the follower, one follower that follows the leader, to actually create a major shift in a dynamic or a system. And then everybody else wants to be included, so they follow the follower who was the first person to follow the leader, right? And so now the leader and the follower don't look crazy, because now everybody wants to be included and on the bandwagon. And that's that 3%. The leader and the follower are the 3%. And so I just keep going back to, it's got to happen at the grassroots level, and it's got to happen with people who are committed to it. So I don't know. I just like, I've seen happen over and over again, that statistic around the 3%. And it's very interesting.
Yeah, Ken Wilber said that many, many years ago. And Margaret Mead said only a tiny portion of humanity is needed to make a change.
Yeah, Margaret Mead is my hero.
Okay. You're following in her footsteps, it looks like.
There's certainly worse heroes to have. Margaret Mead is a wonder. I'm still a Basin fan. No, Jamen, seriously, I think you read it, but I do think sending this to Extinction Rebellion could be useful. I mean, they have their own audience and their own decentralized movement, and they're thinking in terms of getting that 3% people activated.
You're talking about XR, right?
Yep.
Okay. The only problem with XR is they already copied the answer on somebody else's homework and are turning it in. They copied the wrong person's homework. They copied the wrong answer. The answer that they copied was that if we get net zero carbon emissions, this whole thing is going to cool down. When the opposite is true.
I think they can move on that. I don't think that they're going to hold to that strictly. Seriously. Show them. This is about having more faith in humanity's ability to change. Anyway, try it. It can just fail.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll try everything. We're going to throw all the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. That's all we can do, right? If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, well, keep sending it to more people to whom it can stick, right? We only need 3%. So let's get to 3%. Let's not worry so much.
They have their own diffusion network, is what I'm saying, and it would be good if we could piggyback on that.
Yeah, but see, I think the best way for us to do this is to essentially differentiate ourselves, and become like we're essentially going to become the punk rock segment of the climate change industry, right? We're the ones who are basically saying, hey, it's all about the boops, 137 boops, boops. Whoa, were they a joke? Right? I mean, when we first saw punk rock bands back in the late 70s, early 80s, we're just like, well, that's crazy. That's not going to go anywhere. And the next thing you know, they had their slice of the pie. And who was laughing then? Right?
I see what you're saying, but listen, it seems to be the repeated problem of progressive forces that they distinguish themselves and divide and don't pool efforts. Can we just work together more?
No, you didn't see the punk rock bands, pandering to, I don't know, Christopher Cross saying, hey, could we please open for you? Maybe pretty please with it. No, they just said, and they started smashing their guitars and putting electric tape on their nipples and shaking off the whipped cream, right? And they said, yeah, we're doing our own thing. Oh, and beep you, right? And they got everyone's attention. Most people hated them, but they got 3% market share and they were on their way. So we're the punk rockers of the climate change movement, the ones who are actually facing reality and smashing guitars and saying it's all about the boops.
Well,
No, we're not trying to build alliances and find some, middle.
I agree. I agree. One thing I agree with you is that if alliance is about finding milquetoast compromise, that's not useful. But I think that you have a message, you wanted to send it around to whatever network you find.
What would be cool is if you created a small video clip, just a small commercial, 3 minutes long. It's all about the boops and explain why. And we can populate it and just send it to people,
I like what Alexa is saying also. Doing it at the small scale. Interesting. Anyway, folks, it's been wonderful. I'm looped out.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone. So with that, I think it's time to give ourselves a break as the orphanage burns, for my last analogy, on a light of a smoke. So this is Jamen Shively saying thank you for tuning in to the press conference. Love you all.